Hey guys,
Hey, I'm good.
how are you guys doing?
Had an okay weekend, pretty chill. Just binged a show on
No, I
Netflix.
haven't been
Oh
doing
yeah,
much of
Um,
anything. I don't have very
it's
much
been a
work. It all
whole
that's
dried
it.
weekend. It's
up.
been
I
a
took a
long
walk
So
because the weather was nice,
I'm just
but
hanging out
otherwise I didn't do
and
much.
watching Netflix shows.
So how's
It
school
seems
going
like
for you
every
guys?
day
I know
feels
again,
like Monday,
the whole COVID thing, you
and
can't
when
really
it's
go
not
to
Monday,
class.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
know what
can't
day
wait
it
for
Online
it to
is.
now.
rain again.
So
It looks like it's going to, but
I was actually
trying to post
in
myself
and I know it's mostly privilege.
I was alone, or so it seemed, forced to listen to the TV screen, forced to consider my life for what it was, not fully awake, not fully aware of who or what I was. I lost all my work in the shelter at home. I wasn't panicked at first. I am bravest in extreme adversity. I quickly turned inward and swam in the tears. I found that the pain had been waiting there for years. Those too afraid to look inward will lash out in fear. I am an
I was
addict.
actually
I show
trying
all
to
the
post
signs.
myself
Impulsive
and
and
I know
mindless,
it's
I
mostly
feed my
privilege
pain.
to have
that sick
everyone
social
in
experiment.
the same space.
I sit every
I just
day
want
in
to
the
hang
silence
out
of
in my
love,
soul,
a
watching
container
Netflix
for my
shows.
existence.
I'm a communicator, a storyteller, a performer, a teacher. It's all I know how to do, and it is among the very few things I'm any good at. Despite all that, and what other people might assume, I very much value and even prefer my time alone with my family or all by myself. When we were asked to shelter in place, I felt the collective sense of anxiety over our unknown circumstance. My job is to try and reach people. What will happen when we are cut off from that? But I soon discovered that this was my utopia. Just me and my family, working remotely, attending meetings only when necessary, working on absolutely nothing except for teaching and playing with my kids, video games, cartoons, old movies, food and supplies delivered to the door for days and days if I so chose. With young kids and just enough work and responsibility to give me the smallest sliver of meaning to the world, I shed any feelings of guilt or shame over my reluctance to interact with the outside. I had important work here to do at home. Here at home was where I am needed. Here at home has always been the most important thing. My priorities are straight and my pajamas fit fine for weeks at a time, and no one cares that I am not creating a damn thing. And I reveled in the isolation of quarantine. And then the murders happened. 1, 2, 3 Black people who don't look like me. They were just living their lives like I was living mine. I was happy to be in isolation, getting used to a routine that was anything but routine, but was created by me for me. But now I am forced to stop and listen. And I realize I've always lived in isolation, in a world created by me and for me. How comfortable for me. I've always lived that way, and over the last months I was allowed to take that to an extreme, but now the world was exploding, and rightfully so. And I know it's not a big bang. I know it's been exploding forever, and now, yet again, we simply can't ignore it. Ignore that I've been living in self-made isolation, even if now it is supported by the state. What else have I done to help maintain the status quo? How have I contributed to the injustice that is exploding in front of my eyes? I want to do something. I want to be an ally. I want to march. I want to shout. I want to write. I want to create. But now I'm still stuck here, partly by rules and partly by fear. I still have those same kids, those same responsibilities, and I've gotten so used to not using my voice, to loving this isolation. Here's what I know. It's bad out there. So here's the question. Do I keep hiding in here, where I relish the comfort of nothing? Or do I venture out there in an attempt to face something? I thought I was learning about myself, finding my peace, enjoying the ability to cut myself off because the world imploded. Now, how do I, unpracticed, unrefined, and unsure, add my voice to those who need the amplification to be heard over the explosion?
Loss. Loss can make you feel like your house has been blown down while you're in it, and you're left standing in debris and damage. After the shock of the loss has passed, you're left to sift through the rubble and organize, eventually mustering the energy and the resources to rebuild. Knowing that what had been lost was life-altering, and whatever is coming next in life, it will never be the way it was before. Living through this pandemic has brought that same feeling for many. When the orders of shutdown were given and businesses were closed and jobs were lost, it was depressing, frustrating, and scary for so many, not just nationwide, but across the world. Living through this has felt like loss personally and collectively. Loss of money, loss of purpose, loss of connection. And just because something is called a shutdown doesn't mean that life shuts down. Those of us who have lost someone during this time have been left with very few tools to cope with our grief. Couldn't receive a hug for comfort. We couldn't hold a service with our friends and family to share in our collective grief or offer their comfort. Death from addiction rose, death from suicide rose, and of course the new category of death from COVID-19. I lost my mom in January of this year. It was painful. It was expected. We watched her struggle, and we found solace that she wouldn't have to struggle or feel pain anymore. And in light of living in isolation for these past few months, I found gratitude in the timing of my mother's passing. I didn't have to grieve alone because the pandemic had not hit the US yet. I lost my best friend of 20 years, unexpectedly, in April, in the midst of all this. And to this day, it doesn't feel real. I haven't had any closure because we haven't been able to honor him with a service. I worry for my dad. He's already grieving the loss of his wife of 36 years, finding himself alone in a house with nowhere to go and no one to see, with no hope of life worth living after this. But I'm happy to say he is doing well. In the midst of the aftermath of loss, there can be a moment of clarity from the dust and the smoke. A moment of clarity, of freedom, even if it comes at a painful cost. There is freedom that can be had only when the walls you've built in the past have been blown down. For instance, while grieving my mother, the shutdown has helped me a little in several ways. One way is that there is this collective pain, which puts my personal pain in perspective, a different perspective. And another way that there is no normal. So instead of going through the motions of life and everywhere I turn being reminded of my mother somehow, this is a life she never experienced and she never helped me cope with. And though I'd give anything to talk to her about all this, there's some solace that came with her birthday and Mother's Day because we couldn't celebrate the ways that we had in the past. And letting go of the past is the only way to move forward and change. And if I know anything, I know we need to change. Our world needs to change. Our nation needs to change. Our perspectives need to change. I have a glimmer of hope and freedom in all of this loss. A hope that our old ways and structures have been shaken enough to change. I hope that we will be less afraid of a new normal and in fact will be more open and flexible to many possibilities of new normals. In June 2020, we've already seen that 3 months is not enough loss to change our old structures. I hope the rage of nature continues to force people out of their old structures, out of their hiding places, and we can find freedom in a world that has never existed before.
When we realized that COVID-19 was a real and direct threat to our bodies, our health, and survival, I social distanced not just to save my life, but to save those around me. But still, as I peek back out into the world masked and gloved, I'm keeping my distance for myself and for others. And so many people are not willing to do this, to put on the mask. So I must be vigilant. And in doing that, what COVID-19 has taught or reminded me is that we are Black. The masks make us blacker. The virus makes us blacker. For me, COVID-19 can end my life in multiple ways. As a Black person, I'm at greater risk of not receiving prevention or timely healthcare for the virus. As a Black person, my face covering and gloves are read as a threat rather than preventative strategies to mitigate the spread of the virus. And as a Black person, I'm more susceptible to being fired before my white peers or not being hired in the coming markets that open up. As we protest the violence against Black lives, we expose ourselves to the virus. We expose our Black communities to the virus at much higher rates, while at the same time fighting for our lives, for Black lives. We are forced to prioritize racial justice or communal care around the virus. How is it that we have come to a moment where communal care and racial justice are in opposition? Oh wait, that's how it's always been. COVID-19 has allowed us to be seen, and COVID-19 has allowed us to be re-erased. We cannot grieve without the threat of further death. We cannot hug or comfort each other because of the threat of viral death. We cannot see around our masks to build relationships, solidarity, coalition, or places of physical safety. We have to choose which situations it's safe to wear a mask in. We are told to remove our masks to identify ourselves, to justify our right to be in a space. Our masks keep us from breathing. Our masks are a representative of the realities of Black lives in the United States, where we are unseen yet threatening. Social distancing is representative of a long-standing systemic norm where Black, brown, and indigenous peoples are not allowed to gather, not more than 10. It isn't health. It isn't new. It's the pervasive realities of a racist society. When COVID-19 is no longer a threat to Black people, we will still be out here dying. We will continue to die because access to the vaccine will look like the struggle for access to healthcare in Black, brown, and indigenous communities. And even though we have died in higher numbers from COVID-19, we won't be the first or even the second to receive treatment and vaccines. We will remain a real and present danger, masked or unmasked, as our communities continue to die. What COVID-19 and social distancing have taught me is that Black lives truly do not matter. And I'm tired. I'm so very sad. And I'm proud to be Black.
I was alone, or so it seemed, forced to listen to the TV screen, forced to consider life for what it was, empty and isolated. I miss the smell, the sense of collective gathering. How did I not sense it before? Not fully awake, not fully aware of who or what we are. Pain pushes until the vision pulls. The light pours in and potential is infinite. The container is love. I meet each heart with my heart, and with that one action, I connect.